The media is probably going to get off the Florida story immediately. Robert Mueller, special counsel's just announced 13 indictments of Russians for trying to harm Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump get elected. The special counsel, in breaking news, has indicted 16 Russians. I didn't know there were any Russians in this scandal. We had this Russian collusion scandal. I didn't know there were any. Mueller has indicted 16 of them for supporting the campaign of Donald Trump and disparaging Hillary Clinton.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
What the heck is that? I've never heard of anything like this. How can it be a crime to disparage Hillary and support Trump if you're Russians? Well, they've been indicted for interference, but it's not detailed how. It's a grand jury thing. It's a ham sandwich indictment. And that's pretty much all we have on it right now. The special counsel's office said today a federal grand jury indicted 16 Russian nationals and 3 Russian entities in the probe into Russian interference in the 2016 elections. The indictments say that the defendants allegedly, by early to mid-2016, were supporting the presidential campaign of then-candidate Donald J. Trump and disparaging Hillary Clinton. You ever indicted for this? I know there has to be more to this, but of all the things that were forecast and predicted that Mueller might do, I don't remember anybody ever predicting that Russians would be indicted. Don't have any names yet. I wonder if there's some of the Russians that lied to Christopher Steele about his dossier. If you indict the Russians, how do you not indict Steele? But you know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like this is as close as they can get to implicating Trump. Here are we found the Russians working to elect Trump, and they committed offenses, and we're indicting them. No evidence that they worked with Trump, but that's not going to matter. If no more guns works to advance a political agenda, well, this can easily be converted. No, they're not going to. They're not going to. Snerdley asked me if I thought they'd depose Putin. Give Putin a subpoena. An announcement from special counsel Robert Mueller's office said that the government accuses all the defendants of conspiracy to defraud the United States. So here are the charges in a generic sense. 3 defendants are charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud, and 5 defendants are charged with aggravated identity theft. They've got nothing. I mean, the identity theft, wire fraud, bank. Do you know all you have to do is send a stamp to somebody in a strange-looking way? You can be guilty of mail fraud. Mail fraud, bank fraud. These are identity theft. You telling me these guys didn't have LifeLock? Of all the stupid things. You're going to go out and try to steal somebody's identity and you don't have LifeLock to tell you whether or not you're getting away with it? Unreal. So we will continue to follow this. CNN has totally abandoned the gun shooting story in Florida. Fox is talking about this. So the gun shooting, the school shooting in Florida has been swept off the lead items, lead sections of broadcast news, cable news, newspapers by this story. And we will continue to follow. Okay, so let me see if I understand this. Here we are in the very white-hot heat of a school shooting in Florida. It's a Friday afternoon. The media is 150% into this story. And in the middle of this, on a Friday, we get a 3-page story from CNBC saying there's been an indictment of 16 Russians for traveling to the United States to disparage Hillary Clinton and aid in the election of Donald Trump. It's wire fraud, mail fraud, and identity theft. My friends, I have disparaged Hillary Clinton. I wonder if I am in the indictment. This sounds like they've got nothing. This is a Friday afternoon document dump. There's going to be a little press conference right in the middle of this. If you wanted your news heard, you wouldn't do this today. If you had blockbuster news of indictments, you wouldn't be doing it on this day, particularly with the other news that's going on out there. You kind of want to hide this, it seems. Here's Rod Rosenstein, Deputy AG, announcing an indictment. You've got to hear this, folks. You have to hear it.
Advocating for and against particular candidates.
This is
They established social media pages and groups to communicate with unwitting Americans.
This is unreal.
They also purchased political advertisements on social media networks. The Russians
with
also
everybody
recruited
else.
and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns,
So does Google.
and stage political rallies.
So does
The
Facebook.
defendants and their co-conspirators pretended to be grassroots activists. According to the indictment, the Americans did not know that they were communicating with Russians.
So did the Stop Rush movement.
After the election, the defendants allegedly staged rallies to support the president-elect while simultaneously staging rallies to protest his election. For example, the defendants organized one rally to support the president-elect and another rally to oppose him, both in New York on the same day. On September 13th of 2017, soon after the news media reported that the special counsel's office was investigating evidence that Russian operatives had used social media to interfere with the 2016 election.
Did Obama
one
hire them,
defendant
though? That's
allegedly
the
wrote,
question.
Quote, "We had a slight crisis here at work. The FBI busted our activity. So I got preoccupied with covering tracks together with my colleagues." End quote. The indictment includes 8 criminal counts. Count 1 alleges a criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States by all of the defendants. The defendants allegedly conspired to defraud America by impairing the lawful functions of the Federal Election Commission, the United States Department of Justice, and the Department of State. Those organizations of the U.S. government are responsible for administering federal requirements for disclosure of foreign involvement in certain domestic activities. Count 2 charges conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud by Internet Research Agency and 2 of the individual defendants. And counts 3 through 8 charge aggravated identity theft by Internet Research Agency and 4 individuals. Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity.
Oh, no.
There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
Again,
I
they're
caution
telling
you that everyone charged with a crime is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. At trial, prosecutors must introduce credible evidence that is sufficient to prove each defendant guilty beyond any reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury. The special counsel's investigation is ongoing. There will be no comments from the special counsel at this time.
Obviously, because there's nothing here.
This indictment serves as a reminder
Of
that
nothing.
people are not always who they appear to be on the internet. The indictment alleges that the Russian conspirators want to promote discord in the United States
We knew
and
this.
undermine public confidence in democracy. We must not allow them to succeed. The Department of Justice will continue to work cooperatively with other law enforcement and intelligence agencies and
believe
with
this.
the Congress to defend our nation against similar current and future efforts. I want to thank the federal agents and prosecutors
Okay, that's it. That's
who are
it.
working on this
Take it.
case.
Take
their-
it out. Take it out. It's a Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announcing the indictment of 16 Russians that didn't do anything. Now, First thing, it's a Friday. It's in the middle of the shooting story down in Florida, and Mueller did not announce anything. And did you hear? He stressed that in all of this nefarious activity, there wasn't one American involved. And there wasn't one American that benefited. And there is no evidence that any American was involved or benefited. This has been in every leaked story on this subject, starting with the day Trump was elected. Every deep state sourced story, thousands of words alleging collusion. And every story, there was at least one line that admitted, to date, no hard evidence of the allegations has been found. And he said it here again. He repeated, in effect, these indictments, no Americans are involved. No Americans helped. There is no evidence this helped any particular American or harmed any American. And this business that these Russian snakes did rallies for Trump and against Trump on the same day in New York City. Sorry. What are we supposed to take from that? That somebody in the group screwed up. Well, yeah, either that or bipartisan. Well, he said this is kind of like what we're getting out of Florida with the school coverage. The deputy AG warned Americans, the internet is not often what it looks like, folks. The internet is not often what it appears to be. These people were operating bots, and they were exactly what happens every day on the internet and has been going on the internet for the longest time, and there are all kinds of people doing it. But the three takeaways for me, just on the first reaction here is, no Americans participated. No Americans benefited. So then what is this? It still boils down to they don't have anything, and they can't walk away saying they don't have anything, so they have to say they did and got somebody, and this is it. But why go to the trouble? I mean, there's any number of things, if these crimes that they're alleging here were really committed, there's any number of things you could point to. Why point out a rally in New York that was simultaneously for Trump and against Trump? When he started that, I thought he was going to say for Trump and on the same day a rally against Mrs. Clinton. That would have been news. But no, the rally was both for Trump and against Trump. So what, they're bipartisan? They're trying to hide what they're really all about or what they're really trying to do here? And they set up a virtual private network. You can too, folks. If you know where to go in the settings of your iPhone, you can set up a VPN, if you know what one is. Anybody can set up a VPN. You can go on the App Store and buy an app that will link you to a VPN that you pay for. A virtual private network is a way to cover and hide where you are, and it's a security-related thing. And it is it's also designed to keep people from being able to track what you're surfing on the web, any number of benefits. And high-profile people are often urged to use them. But he pointed out as though the Russians are doing something really, really super sneaky and super secret, a virtual private network. Go to the Wi-Fi settings of your iPhone and click on them, and then scroll down, and you'll see where you can turn on. And don't do it. I mean, you have to do things first before you set up the VPN. Don't do it, but I just want you to be able to see that you can. Let's take a break. We will come back and resume. I got to get started with your phone calls because that hasn't happened yet. So I guess that's what will come up when we get back. So be patient here. Did you note that the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, by the way, this is the guy that appointed Mueller. In case you've not seen his picture or heard his voice, this is the guy that appointed Mueller. This is the guy that oversees Mueller's investigation. And Rosenstein said that the Russians that are indicted here came here in 2014 to start getting set up. Now, I have to remind everybody, 2014, nobody knew Trump was going to get in the race. 2014, everybody thought it was going to be Jeb, Cruz, Kasich, but not Trump. It wasn't until 2015 that Trump announced. But anyway, here's the takeaway. Rosenstein said the defendants created hundreds of accounts using fake personas on Facebook. Folks, this happens. The Google does this, aligning against Republicans every day. Google monkeys with their search results. Facebook is doing this. Google practically had an office in the Obama West Wing doing just this kind of stuff. Now, the Russians are being indicted for it. They were also on Twitter and Instagram to advance their scheme. But then there was this, like there has been in every single one of these stories. Rosenstein said there is no allegation in the indictment that any American was a knowing participant in the scheme, nor is there any allegation that the scheme affected the outcome of the election. So what is this? In every story for the year and a half we've been at this, every story contains that inclusion. No evidence has yet been confirmed to support the allegation, but U.S. officials familiar with the story say it's likely to be forthcoming, but it hasn't ever been. No allegation the scheme affected the outcome of the election. Well, isn't that what this is about? The indictment says that part of the Russian influence campaign dates back to 2013, and the goal was to spread distrust toward the candidates and the political system in general. Okay, then I have some help. Here's how you can thwart the Russians. Now, I'm being dead serious here. Part of the Russian scheme dates to 2013. I was wrong. I thought it was 2013. And the goal was to spread distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. Okay? My suggestion, folks, is anytime you see a headline of a story, Russian collusion, don't click on it. It's clickbait. That's how the Russians were trying to spread distrust toward the candidates and the political system. So anytime you see a mainstream media headline or story with Russian collusion, don't click on it. It's fake news. Just trying to. And by the way, folks, having a fake name or 30 fake names on Twitter or Facebook is not hacking. I mean, you can do it. It's done. What they're talking about hacking, and that's not. I'm not Rosenstein, this indictment. That is not hacking. Anyway, we continue to have a lot to unpack, and we have more phone calls coming up. There's one other thing on this, and I want to read to you from the indictment itself. One of the listen. Oops, hang on just a second. It is. Let me get the right account here. Get this. The indictment claims that the Russians were using social media platforms to address a range of issues, including immigration, the Black Lives Matter movement, religion, North versus South. In other words, it was the Russians creating all this antagonism. It was the Russians pitting Americans against each other. I can tell you it's a hell of a lot more than the Russians doing that. There are Americans doing that. This sounds, it's early, but it seems like nothing here. Now, I know that the indictment that was announced here moments ago is the focus of attention now on Fox, CNN, and I assume MSNBC. And CNN is all in on the fact that this is it. This is the collusion. This is the first series of indictments that are sure to come. I haven't had a chance to pay much attention to how it's being treated at Fox. But folks, I want to tell you this is so very strange, because the things that these Russians are being indicted for are things that thousands of Americans do on social media every day. And it falls under the First Amendment. It really is curious to me. Here we are on a Friday, and it's a 3-day weekend for a lot of people. It's President's Day weekend, the annual ski holiday weekend. And you have this story of the shooting at the school in Florida, which is just dominating the news. And I would think that if you're the special counsel, and if you're going to announce indictments, and they are major, you're not going to do it today. You're not never on a Friday anyway. Friday's document dump day, particularly as you get into the afternoon. And if you're going to announce major indictments, you don't send the Deputy Attorney General out there to read them and highlight them. You send the special counsel himself out there, who would be Mueller. But we didn't get Mueller today. We got Rosenstein. And I don't care about the details. I think there's only one thing in this indictment or in this press conference that he's made today that matters. And this is it. And everything else is noise. Now, I'm going to deal with it, but everything else is noise. Rosenstein said there is no allegation in the indictment that any American was a knowing participant in the scheme, nor is there any allegation that the scheme affected the outcome of the election. To me, that's all you really need to know. If you want to know what this means, if you want to know how much weight this has, if you want to know what potential damage may arise from this, this is all you need to know. Rosenstein said there is no allegation in the indictment that any American was a knowing participant in the scheme, nor is there any allegation the scheme affected the outcome of the election. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what this investigation set out to prove. That the scheme did affect the outcome of the election, and it was to guarantee the election of Trump and to injure the campaign of Hillary. And this indictment of 16 Russians explicitly explains that the scheme did not affect the outcome of the election and that no American participated in it knowingly. Well, whatever else is in this is largely no big deal. If you put this thing on a scale, there are other little add-ons. The indictment does claim that there were people in the Trump campaign unwittingly, unwittingly approached or unwittingly participating or some such thing, but it makes it clear that the Trump campaign had nobody, at least in these series of indictments, nobody in the Trump campaign had the slightest idea what was going on, that they were tricked, that they were unwittingly involved. So not only is there no allegation in the indictment that any American was a knowing participant in the scheme and the scheme affected in no way the outcome of the election, Trump people involved were unwittingly involved, which meant they were being fooled. They didn't know. Anyway, now, this cannot possibly placate the left. It cannot possibly satisfy CNN. This has got to be a gigantic letdown. Now, they probably won't cover it that way, but I'm telling you, in the editor's offices over there, they've got to just be crying their eyes out. Because these three elements just nuke the entire premise of this. The scheme did not affect the outcome of the election. No allegation in the indictment any American was a knowing participant. Trump campaign people unwittingly involved, whatever. The word involved is not used. I forget the exact sentence. No Americans indicted. A couple of other bits of information I think that demonstrate how really curious this is and flimsy. The indictment says that part of the Russian influence campaign dates to 2013. It involved hundreds of people and millions of dollars. The goal was to spread distrust toward the candidates and the political system in general. Now, look, I'm not disputing that, but the Russians aren't the only people to do that. The Democrat Party does this. There are people with fake names, phony IDs all over Twitter and Facebook who have created bots that are trying to create what appears to be reality, and it's nothing more than lies. There are people trying to make themselves look like they are 10,000 people instead of 10 people, and that they're all angry at this or that company or this or that candidate. There are so many liberals playing this kind of game on the internet, on Twitter and Facebook, to single out the Russians for doing it and making it look like they're the only ones doing it. Back to 2013, spread distrust in general. Then there's this. The Russians were openly using social media platforms to address a range of issues, including immigration, the Black Lives Matter movement, religion, North versus South. In other words, Russia sought to divide America amongst race, religion, and more. Well, I could make the case that the Democrat Party fosters these divisions as well. I believe that feminism, militant feminism, is in part created for the purposes of creating friction between men and women. And I don't doubt the Black Lives Matter movement itself is trying to divide America on race. Believe me, Black Lives Matter doesn't need any help in sowing seeds of unrest. I don't care if the Russians are helping them or not. They don't need any help. North versus South. And let's not forget, this story that on a day after the election, the week after the election, Russians organized one rally in New York to show your support for President-elect Donald Trump, and another rally organized by the Russians that was called Trump is Not My President. So the Russians did two competing rallies on the same day, the week after the election. Well, does anybody remember the name Robert Kramer? Robert Kramer was exposed by James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. Robert Kramer is the husband of Jan Schakowsky, who's a congressperson from Illinois. He lives in Chicago. And the Project Veritas secret cameras recorded Robert Kramer admitting that he hired rent-a mobsters, that he hired protesters and paid them and outfitted them with caps and T-shirts to attend Donald Trump rallies and to start violence, to create violence, to harass and stalk Trump supporters to provoke them into retaliating physically. We have learned that Robert Kramer visited the West Wing 58 times and had 16 personal meetings with Barack Obama. Robert Kramer, an American leftist radical, is hiring people to protest and shut down Trump rallies. He's using money from the Hillary Clinton campaign to do it, by the way. Now, you tell me, how do the Russians stack up to that? Why is Kramer not indicted for meddling and interfering? Is it because he's an American, he's entitled to, and the Russians aren't? And where in this indictment is the acknowledgement that Hillary Clinton bought and paid for an opposition research document that was then used to portray actual intelligence when it wasn't? Yeah, the Russians did this, and they were creating fake identities, and they were engaging in identity theft and so forth. The Russians were hacking here, and they were using virtual private networks. You wouldn't believe a number of people use VPNs. Legitimate people. And creating fake identity and creating bots, trying to affect the outcome of the election. You know what's amazing? The number of Americans in social media trying to affect the outcome of the election is in the millions. I mean, you get my point here. Why are they doing it? They're attempting to sabotage one candidate and elect another, and both sides. Trump supporters are trying to sabotage Hillary on social media, vice versa. And yet the Russians are portrayed here as the only ones doing it, and it was so bad, we have to indict them. The Russians weren't doing anything that's not being done by others, including Americans. And I can't stand this idea of watching these cable news people act like this is the epitome of offensive, outrage, and behavior. Can you believe what the Russians were doing? Give me a break. Can you believe what the Russians were doing? This is what has become of the internet. In many ways, this is exactly how social media has been used for a long time, long before the 2016 election came along. You know what appears to me, Mr. Snerdley? It appears that they know at the deputy AG level and at the special counsel that the CNNs of the world have created such expectation and demand that they've got to give them something. They have got to give, even if it doesn't have many calories, they have got to give them something. And so that's what this is. They're feeding them just enough because this doesn't, again, no evidence whatsoever that any American was a knowing participant, nor is there any allegation that the Russian scheme affected the outcome of the election. So what does all the rest of it even matter? I think everybody had to be shocked that there were Russians indicted. Nobody's expecting that. And what were the Russians were indicted for setting up fake social media accounts and buying Facebook ads to say bad things about Hillary Clinton. That's indictable. And then I'm told that CNN has been breathlessly asking whether or not Putin will turn over these Russians that have been indicted for prosecution. And, of course, that opens up something else. These people being indicted are never going to be tried because they're never going to be here. And Putin is not going to extradite them. What Mueller has just done, folks, what the special counsel has just done, I'm telling you, all that matters here. No allegation in the indictment that any American was a knowing participant. No allegation that the scheme affected the outcome of the election. Bye-bye investigation. Mueller has just confirmed that there wasn't any Trump-Russia collusion. Now, I know there are going to be a lot of other people going to get lost in the weeds on this. And they're going to be parsing and bisecting every sentence. And they're going to be looking for everything they can to find some hidden hint from Mueller that the big hammer is yet to come. Indicting Russians? There weren't any Russians in the original Trump collusion story. Don't forget. And by the way, folks, I'm stunned that the Russians did this in the first place, or alleged to, because remember, Obama, he got serious about this. The world was genuinely fearful of Obama, and Obama told Putin to cut it out. Remember him? I told Vladimir Putin to cut it out. And Putin apparently defied our great, courageous president. Okay, so here's another way of looking at this. After a year, and millions and millions and millions of dollars spent, and 25 pit bull warriors working for Mueller, today's message, a reminder that people are not always who they appear to be. We are being warned that the internet could be people who are not who they appear to be. That's what we bought. Can you imagine if we'd had this kind of investigation beforehand into this guy that everybody was worried about in Florida? CNN talking about, the indictment says that the Russians are trying to help Cruz or hurt Cruz and Rubio and Hillary and help Trump and Sanders. So were millions of other people. Millions of other people were doing the same thing the Russians were doing.